Welcome to Mishnah study Masachet Sheviit Perek Tet Mishnah Bet. Over here in this Mishnah, we're going to talk about the Biur, right? So as Rambam said, and I'll say it as well, we promised to speak about this so many times in the Masachet that we're finally going to explain what this concept of Biur means. So firstly, we have to remember Pasuk from Vayikra, V'libimtecha v'dachaya asher be'artzecha tiyechol tipwatah le'echol. So to the animal, right? To your behema and to your haya, your domesticated and your non-domesticated animals, they're allowed to also eat from the tivua, right? On the Shinat Shemitah. And they learn from the Sifra, right? So it's a Midrash Halacha, ma haya she'ena birshuto ochelet, right? The same way a haya, which is not an undomesticated animal, it's not in his property, right? They're allowed to eat in the Shemitah. Behema she birshuto eno din sheteachel. Right, behema, of course, it should be able to eat. A domesticated sheep that you have in your pen, of course, you give it to eat. Right, it's a kal v'chomer. Why does the Torah have to even mention both? Ela kol zman shehaya ochelet min hasadeh ha'echil libemtecha min habayit. As long as the haya is eating in the field, so too you're allowed to feed your behema at home. But kala lahaya min hasadeh. Right? Once it's finished, there's no more food left for the animal, for the haya in the field, you're no longer allowed to go ahead and feed your animal at home. You have to get rid of that food, that item from your house. So what do you learn from here? That if you gathered some fruits, right, Shemitah fruits into your home to feed, to eat, to feed your animals, whatever it may be, you're allowed to keep them in your property, in your domain, as long as those fruits are still growing in the field. But once those fruits stop growing in the field, you need to do biur. You need to get rid of them. According to Harambam, biur is getting rid of all these fruits. Right? Other Rishonim say, oh, you can make it hefker and then you can bring them back into the house. Harambam does not say that. Harambam is very clear. You need to finish consuming them or destroy them, burn them, throw them away. You're no longer allowed to have them in your possession once they are no longer in the field. So for example, right? For example, if you had figs that were, they were growing that were growing outside. You pick them, you dry them out. You wanted to have some dried figs. You're allowed to eat those dried figs in your house as long as figs are still growing on the trees. But the second that the figs are, finished growing on the trees, you're no longer allowed to keep those figs in your house anymore. You need to get rid of them, finish eating them, or destroy them. So this is what the biur, means. Now, similarly, if you sold something, that becomes demeh Sheviit, money of Sheviit. You also need to get rid of this money of the Sheviit at that same time frame as well, right? So biur applies to fruits, to the Sheviit, and it applies to demeh Sheviit as well. Now that we have this principle, when is something considered finished? You have all of Eretz Yisrael, right? We're going to divide up Israel into 3 territories, and each territory will divide into another 3. We'll see what the ramification of this is. I pulled a picture over here. We'll see part of it in Galil. We'll have part of Yehuda. We'll also have the Ever HaYarden. So we'll see what all these 3 territories are. And what we're going to speak about is these territories, as long as they're in one of them, right? As long as it's in one of the territories of the Galil, you're allowed to continue eating those fruits. So let's say you had figs, right? And you on the upper Galilee, and you go outside. There's no more figs left on the trees in the upper Galilee, but in Tiberia they're still growing, right? Which is already in the Shefela of in the more that the plains area, right? Much closer to the Kinneret. You're allowed to still eat your fruits up in the upper Galilee as long as you can find some of those fruits in the Galil. Right? That's going to be the principle of our Mishnah. So let's go through it. Shalosh aratzot lebiur. There are 3 territories, 3 lands for the biur, as we explained what biur is. Yehuda, ve'Ever HaYarden, ve'Galil. Right? It's Yehuda, right? Yehuda is the central area, right? Judea and Samaria, as we know it today. The Galil, the upper Galilee, Ever HaYarden is the bank of the Jordan. It seems like, according to Harambam, it may not be so much like this picture. You can see how Ever HaYarden over here in this picture is on the eastern bank of the Jordan. It seems like Harambam actually understands this as the western side of the Jordan. it makes also more sense because that's really the places that Ezra, came during the second Aliyah, right? That's the Kedusha Shniyah. And it seems like Rambam here, from the way he explains later in the Mishnah, it seems like that the Ever HaYarden is the bank of the Jordan, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the eastern side. It could be also the western side. So those are the three territories. Now, shalosh aratzot lekol achat ve'achat, right? Each one could be subdivided into three. So you have Galil HaAlyon, the Galil HaTachton, ve'Emek. Right, so you have the Upper Galilee, the Lower Galilee, and the Emek, the valley. Now, Kfar Hanania Ulmala, Kfar Hanania and northward, which is actually it's about the ancient Kfar Hanania is about half a mile away from modern day Kfar Hanania. That's considered Kol She'eno Megadosh Shikmim Galil HaAlyon. Right, so it doesn't grow any shikmin. What's shikmin? We say the sycamore tree, right? That's considered the Upper Galilee. But from Kfar Hanania and southward, right, where shikmin grows, that's considered the Lower Galilee. And then you have the borders of Tiberia, right? The borders of Tiberia is considered the Emek, right? So that's the picture that we have. Upper Galilee, Lower Galilee, and then Tiberia is the Emek, right? You see a thin slither of green for the Emek. So that's the Galilee area. Ubi Huda, in Yehuda area, Har ve'Ashifela ve'Emek, right? Those three, right? So you have the Har, right? The Har, the Shifela, and the Emek. And then you have, right, and I need to insert into the Mishnah to understand over here, the Ever HaYarden, right, consists of what? Shefilat Lod, right? Shefilat Lod, right? Rambam says over here, Be'ever HaYarden Shlosha Halakim, Shefilat Lod, Be'ahar Shefilat Shelod, U'Mbet Horon Ad Hayam. Right, so those three are the fall under the Ever HaYarden. That's the way Rambam explains it. And that's why I was saying that Ever HaYarden, if Lod, like Shefilat Lod and Bet Horon are all part of the Ever HaYarden, that's the way Rambam is explaining. Right, it seems like it's on the western bank of the Jordan. So Shefilat Lod is Shefilat HaDarom. Ve'ahar Shela ki Har HaMelech, right, the mountain area around Lod is like Har HaMelech, which is a really important, which is a prestigious mountain that gave forth a lot of great fruit. Bet Horon ve'Adayam Medina Hat, right? It's all considered one territory, meaning what? Kilomar, Rambam explains over here, and this is important because Rambam is unique in this also. As long as it's found in any of those sub 3 territories, right? You could eat in that whole territory itself, right? So if you're anywhere in the Galil, you could, eat, within the Galil. Others, Tosafot, other Rishonim actually explain that we consider this as 9 totally different territories. Each one is separate, right? If you found in the Galil Ha'ilyon, and if it's finished in Galil Ha'ilyon, you cannot eat even if it's found in Galil Tahton, right? So Rambam is unique over here, way more lenient. And yeah, as a halacha also today, we are posek much more like Rambam. It's interesting today when do you consider certain fruits to be finished, right? Especially because so much of the fruits is really shipped from one place to the next in Israel. I think today in Israel, they consider almost all of Israel as one territory in this regard, which is a very mekil status.